Start. Welcome, guys, back to another episode with the Winning Browns podcast, where two Indian kids try to win over more subscribers and more games, which we definitely have, than the actual Cleveland Browns do. And on the same note, try to lose less money than the Browns have invested in quarterback Deshaun Watson.
Wow.
Because
Fire shots on day one. Okay.
yes, I
Wow,
mean,
these wow. Wowza. Okay.
hey, I mean, it fits perfectly with how the season
Yeah.
has begun because it has started off with a bang, especially with some of the storylines. The Browns on and off the field, specifically for Watson, have been
Yeah.
interested, and that, among other stuff, we'll get into in this episode. We got a fun episode for you guys today. We're going to be talking about obviously what has happened, what's transpired in these first 3 weeks as far as the NFL, and a few discussion points that have been definitely prevalent. Topic of less yardage among quarterbacks, and even just kind of certain quarterbacks that you would never have expected having kind of resurgence seasons and what's behind that. But I mean, Akilesh, I know you have some things to say about some of these teams. Uh, I'll let you start with this.
I mean, okay, look, when we talk about this NFL season, this one is going to be different from any other that we've had. It's not going to be that type of season where we see a team that's like 15 and 2 or 15 and 2, 14 and 3 or something like that. We're going to see a team that goes the best team in the NFL is going to have a record of 13 and 5, right? It's going to be that type of NFL season this year because it's just that 12 and 5 rather. It's just going to be that competitive of a season this year. Um, just to start off with the teams, I mean, we'll start off with teams like the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, you look at the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals. These teams, based on their talent, at least the Ravens, shouldn't be 1 and 2 at this point in time, right? You look at the amount of talent that this team has, the way that their coaching staff is constructed, the way their players are constructed. This team should not be a 1 and 2 team. This team should almost be a 3 and 0 team at this point, right? You look at the Detroit Lions, they lost one game early in the year. You look at the San Francisco 49ers. Look, in immense number of injury problems on that side. And Brock Purdy is, in all fairness, trying to do his best. I will give him that. But at the same time, they are inconsistent. They are, quite frankly, I don't think they've learned anything after losing that Super Bowl. They're pretty much the same exact team. They're not really being focused in the game. Different aspects they have to change during the game is just not sinking in right. It almost feels like that team has to be that perfect roster in order for it to be the 49ers that we've always known and come to believe from Kyle Shanahan. But all those teams aside, like throw them away. I only want to focus on three teams today. Number one, the Dallas Cowboys. Number two, the Philadelphia Eagles. And number three, the Los Angeles Chargers. We'll start off with the Dallas Cowboys. We'll start off with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, you see, when we talk about the Cowboys, it's a real special day. Because when the Cowboys are 1 and 2, every fan of those blue little ding dong like stars are shining so bright. You know when? You know when they shine so bright though? In the daytime. That makes no sense, right? They usually shine in the dark time. You know why they shine in the daytime? Because when the entire place is just bright, you see that one little bit of darkness, that's what shines out. Those are Dallas Cowboys fans. And it makes me feel so good to see them Dallas Cowboy fans know that they ain't got a chance this year. They might as well switch off their TV, forget ESPN subscription for a good amount of time. Because you know they're not going to make the Super Bowl. They're not going to be in New Orleans. I can tell you one thing, Yoshi. If you want to buy Super Bowl tickets, you can bet it's not going to be blue. I'll tell you that much, right? The Dallas Cowboys just proven to the world what a dysfunctional group of human beings they are. That's what I look at the Dallas Cowboys as. Jerry Jones as the owner. Look, man, you've done this for a long time. You're about 80 years old. Might as well just go hit the bed at this point. Because you need to stop being what you were in the 90s. You held off on Emmitt Smith's extension. You waited till 2 games down in the 93 season to finally give him that extension. You won the Super Bowl with probably the best running back of all time. You could make that argument with Emmitt Smith, right? But you ain't got the best receiver in the NFL with CeeDee Lamb. You don't have the best running back in the NFL at any standard. You don't have the best defensive player in the NFL. Let's be honest, Micah Parsons is not the best defensive player in the NFL. You can't make an argument for it. If we're just looking at the statistics, you can't make that argument right now.
Might be the
He
most
has,
talented defensive player,
sure,
but not the best. Yeah.
yeah, without a doubt, right? You look at that. You look at your defensive line, which can't stop the run if their life is dependent on it. You look at their quarterback, Dak Prescott, who, let's be honest, hasn't had the worst start of all seasons, but by any means hasn't had the best start of any season, right? You look at all of these things cumulative. You can't do the same process you did with those star players that you're doing it right now. And Jerry Jones is just being that old head who just can't change. It starts from that ownership and then it boils down to the players. You look at the Micah Parsons thing, it reminds me of the 93 Oilers. Just complete dysfunction within the team. There's just no continuity, there's no understanding of each other. It's a pure malfunction, and I love every bit of it. I sat down with an ice cream. You know the things you go to the restaurant, right? They give you that sizzling brownie. So
Oh
they
yeah.
put the brownie, right? And then they got the hot chocolate sauce they just pour over with the vanilla. You know what I did? I made brownies, made the chocolate sauce. I bought two flavors from Walmart, from Whole Foods. Guess what? Discount, by the way. I didn't even buy it for full price. Discounted. I got the big box of Alden's. If you guys haven't tried Alden's, it's great. I'll tell you what flavors I got too. I got the vanilla and chocolate combo, and I got the forgot the name. Oh no, I remember blueberry. You know why? Because I wanted to eat all that blue up to show every Cowboys fans there you don't have any luck, no luck at any cost. You know what I did? I took that brownie, right? I let it chill in the fridge. I let it chill in the fridge first. Then I brought out. I put the chocolate sauce over it, caramel sauce too. I didn't forget the caramel too. And then I went with the vanilla chocolate and blueberry at the same time. I devoured the Cowboys that day. It
Represent.
was the greatest day of my life because no. You know what it was? They were up against the Ravens. The Ravens were dominating them, and they were coming back. And I made the ice cream at that time. You know why? You know why? When you think you've reached the ceiling, when you climb that ladder all the way, and that the apple hits you on the head, and you fall all the way back down, and you know you can't get up. Oh, it's a great feeling, man. It's
The
a great feeling to know that Cowboys is 1-2. Is
three
maybe
colors.
two.
The three colors you mentioned represent the three parts of the Dallas Cowboys right now.
Yeah,
The blue represents them as an entity. The vanilla,
yeah.
the basicness of the Cowboys, what they've the
They're basically
regularity.
basic.
Yeah,
They're
they're
just raised.
been regular and normal since the late '90s, and then chocolate. Unfortunately, they're not nearly as sweet as chocolate, but they're the
Yeah,
same color as what chocolate is, but also what another brown entity is.
yeah.
And we're
Really.
not
I
talking
mean,
about Indian people. We're talking about
yeah.
some other brown entity.
We know that bathroom has been in heavy usage. But seriously, man, it it has been a horror show in Dallas, and I can't wait for it to get more excessive. Now, moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles. Reason why I want to bring that up, Saquon Barkley is playing much better than I expected. We have to mention the Philadelphia Eagles. The reason why I say that is this: we've seen the best of Jalen Hurts. It's over. Jalen Hurts is not going to be that guy anymore. It's over. The only way he becomes the Super Bowl Jalen Hurts that we remember is if Shane Steichen's the offensive coordinator. That's it. There is no coming back of Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is gonna be, if you really want to think about it, like a Mark Rippon or a who was the quarterback? He was supposed to be a bust, kind of came back in the late '80s for the Raiders. First round draft pick, went in New England. Oh, he was a Heisman Trophy winner.
Oh, Jim Plunkett?
No,
No,
give me 1 second. Maybe I can
for
find it.
Patriots. You said?
No, he was drafted by the Patriots, and then he won the Super Bowl with the '83 Raiders.
Yeah, I
He
think
was
this
kind of a
Jim Plunkett.
comeback. Jim Plunkett, you are right. My bad, man. Jim Plunkett. Oh, what was my point? Jim Plunkett, right? You're just gonna be kind of those guys who's just gonna hand the ball off. I'm just gonna be the quarterback who's not really gonna make much of a show. That's what he's gonna be. He's really not gonna be that playmaker. We've seen their defense is atrocious. Really, it really is. Um, it's just it's unacceptable the way they're playing. Honestly, because I feel this team should be 3-0. Like maybe I'm being hard on them, but I think this team should be 3-0. Now I'm gonna cover just three other teams. Sorry, I'm adding to the list, but I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's important that we
Go
discuss
ahead.
it.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm also gonna talk about the New Orleans Saints. That offense those first 2 weeks was obliterating defenses. Now the Dallas Cowboys, look, they obliterated them at home. Can't find a better day for a Sunday dinner or whatever you want to call it in Britain. I think it's called Sunday roast or whatever. But at the same time, their offense coordinator, I think he's the son of Clint Kubiak, if I'm not wrong,
Yeah,
from
he hit that.
Gary
Clint
Kubiak.
Kubiak is his name. Yeah,
Yeah, Gary
he's the
Kubiak.
son of Gary Kubiak. Yeah.
Son of Gary Kubiak. My bad. He's done an incredible job with that New Orleans roster. Derek Carr has looked better than he's ever looked in his entire career. Against the Eagles, Vic Fangio figured him out, which we've always known. When you put pressure on Derek Carr, he's going to become that average quarterback. And that Saints offensive line couldn't stop that pressure from the Philadelphia Eagles. But even then, this team has just been dominating. I mean, 40 points back to back weeks. Incredible start. Incredible start for the Saints. That's that. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-0. That's for me the biggest shock of the season. I'll be very honest. It is the biggest shock of the season for me because I didn't expect the Pittsburgh Steelers to be one of the few teams to be 3-0. I mean, is their competition great? No, they haven't faced the best competition. But at the same time, their offense, as anemic as it has been, that defense is playing like a Hall of Fame defense. This is number one defense in every statistical category. That's incredible. Points per game, they're allowing less than 10 points a game, allowing less than 10 points a game on this first three games. Their defense by any means isn't young, right? They do have Cameron Hayward, who's like 50 years old. You have TJ Watt edging on 30. No, I'm being serious, man. That guy stands in that middle
He
and
ages
he's
like a
about
fine
50 years
wine,
old.
man. He ages like a
Yeah.
fine wine.
I mean,
He gets
I don't know
better
if he's
as you.
already aged, but considering he's 50, I don't know if he's aged, but like, yeah, sure, he's aging like fine wine.
14
Um,
seasons in the league.
yeah, for one team, that's
Yeah.
commitment. And then you look at TJ Watt, my favorite player in the NFL right now, without a doubt. This guy's just been dominating on every stretch, but he's edging 30. He is edging 30. You look at Alex Highsmith, also not by any means a young player, but that defense is playing like they're 21-year-olds. So much energy, so much power, so much rise. Um, you gotta love everything about the Steelers. And now the Jim Harbaugh lightning bolt Chargers. This team started off, wowza, incredible start. I mean, you look at those first two games of the season, they just were on fire. Let's start from the offensive standpoint. J.K. Dobbins has come in as an Ohio State running back under a Michigan head coach. It has to be mentioned. That rivalry is something to talk about now. He came in and he's been dominating. I don't know if you know this, Yash. J.K. Dobbins is the only player in Charger history to go back to back 100 games to start the season.
Yep.
LaDainian Tomlinson
Even LaDainian Tomlinson didn't do that.
couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. That's incredible. That's like quite honestly incredible. He came in, he dominated literally the first two games. And you look at that offensive line. Joe Alt is the rookie of the year, in my opinion. He's been the best rookie by far. By far. No rookie has been as good a player as Joe Alt has been. That guy hasn't allowed a single sack all season, and well, against TJ Watt, but he was injured. Let's give that some thought. But man, has this team just been on fire. Defensively, Jesse Minter, I don't know what he was drinking. Some asterisk oblique solution. I don't know what he was drinking. But my God, that man, he changed the entire NFL. He took linebacker like defensive backs and he made them just go blitzing crazy out of any quarterback, put the pressure on quarterbacks. He has just been incredible as a defensive coordinator. I can't believe I'm saying this. The Los Angeles Chargers are top 10 in every defensive statistical category. Can you imagine me saying that now? I've been suffering for oh no, well, 3 years of being literally last in defense. Brandon Staley, I still love you, my guy. I still love you. But I love Jesse Minter more. And I love Jim Harbaugh, and I love the most, the Charger GM. You know I love him the most. Joe Ortiz, I love you. Um, but problem has struck. That's my problem now. The injuries are just piling on and on. Jim, Justin Herbert's out, right? We really can't say he's in. At this point, Joe Alt is injured with an MCL sprain, which we don't know how long it's going to last. Rashawn Slater is gone. So both of the core of our offensive line are now gone. Now we got to face the Chiefs, who got already a monster-like defense with George Karlaftis and Chris Jones and all this trash-talking babyface dudes.
Don't forget
And
their
then you
secret
got,
weapons. Don't forget their secret
huh?
weapon, the referees. The Kansas City Chiefs, the
Yeah.
best
Oh
player,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
MVP.
I'm gonna let you go on that because I've talked for too long. I'm gonna try to finish up here.
Yeah, go ahead, go.
But Justin Herbert was balling. He's going to be out. We got Quentin Johnson, who's improved a lot more this season. Lad McConkey, Ladidi McConkey has been balling. If you guys haven't watched Rich Eisen, search up Lad McConkey. Funniest clip of the season. Um, Ladidi has been playing just fabulous. But at the same time, when you got your entire offensive line injured, when Greg Roman's literally butter of his playbook is the run game, I don't see much hope until we get those guys back. So I'm going to lay back. I'm going to be patient with the Chargers because I know we're going to win a Super Bowl before Kyle Shanahan does. Go ahead.
First off, that last comment is certainly untrue.
No,
It's
I
coming
don't think
from an
so.
avid
I
Jim
don't.
Harbaugh supporter, but yeah, we're gonna win the Super Bowl this year. Um,
You
yeah,
no. Hey, to the American public here, you don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl. You don't think.
I
In your
do.
heart of hearts, no, you
I
don't.
think
You're
so.
smiling right now. You don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl, man. You're lying.
Here's why. They have to, because I'm gonna be in New Orleans on the week of the Super Bowl. We'll see what happens there. Kendrick
You
Lamar
said this
is
about
performing
five
at the
times,
Super
man. No
Bowl.
one
It
cares.
has to
You're in
be.
New Orleans right
It will
now.
be the perfect moment of my life, and there's no way that I don't get that moment. The Niners have to be in the Super Bowl, man. It's destiny. It's manifest destiny right here. But well, that's a topic for another day. I will say the Chargers thing is kind of a perfect transition because definitely I'd say the Chargers are one of the teams that has very much intrigued me for a lot of cases, specifically with their defense. But I'll start off with their offense. Herbert continues to play like one of the elite quarterbacks in the league. Um, I wouldn't. I'm not going to say that he's on the same tier as the top three QBs in the league because I
Yep.
think he still has somewhat to prove certain things. But certainly, whenever he's gotten good situations with him, he's performed like one of the best QBs in the league, and we've seen that with some of the numbers that he's put. Obviously, with Greg Roman's offense, he's kind of been limited as far as passing yards. But then honestly, it doesn't really matter because the Chargers have still won. J.K. Dobbins, like you said, has performed really, really well. I think he's a perfect fit for what this Chargers was looking, and for once he's actually healthy, which helps. Their offensive line is great. They got top 10 players at pretty much every position on that offensive line, or at least top 10 performers at one point or another in their young careers. Bradley Bozeman, who at one point was a top 5 center in the league, still top 10, still very good. Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater, you mentioned how good they are. Jamari Salyer, very underrated guard. And on the other side, you have what's his face, Zion Johnson, who's quickly emerging as one of the best young guards in the league. Um, what I will say is that the thing that really impressed, and then as far as the even the receivers too, DJ Chark, I think fits that perfect like Michael Crabtree role that Harbaugh had with the 49ers.
Yeah.
You see a guy like Quentin Johnston, who you mentioned, very much has improved this year. And I think a guy like Harbaugh was perfect for being able to maximize his potential. Um, but I think the thing that intrigues me most is their defense with Jesse Minter. What intrigues me is the amount of versatility on that defense. You got a guy like Joey Bosa, who majority of his career he played in a 4-3. Now he plays in a 3-4 defense, and he's playing like one of the best. He's turned the clock 5 years. He's playing like one of the best defensive edge rushers in the league right now.
Yeah.
That's extremely impressive. And then you look at the depth behind with guys like Tuli Tuipulotu, who's still phenomenal. Khalil Mack, who's still phenomenal. You got the inside linebackers, you get a guy like Denzel Perryman back, and he's playing like he did in 21. Junior Colson looks pretty good as a backup right now. Diane Hanley has played well. Obviously, it's not the Bowman and Willis thing that you had.
Yeah.
Um,
Yet. It's not yet. But let's calm down.
right,
It's not
right.
yet. Yeah.
It's still way too early to say whether that's the case either way, but certainly that's a great contribution to that Chargers defense. But then what really struck me is some of the free agent signings that the Chargers had last year that I was very intrigued by. Guys like Puna Ford, guys like Elijah Molden, and guys like Christian Fulton. These are guys that were very under the radar, very sneaky good moves that the Chargers picked up. And I wasn't a big fan of all of them. Molden was more of that, okay, he's just kind of like a placeholder type role. Christian Fulton I liked as a move. And then Puna Ford, I was just not a big fan of that move because I just thought he was not a fit whatsoever. And I think he played bad last year, but he's at a career renaissance. Played like one of the best defensive linemen in the league this year. You got a guy like Elijah Molden, who I'm pretty sure is top 3 in PFF grade at his position, playing as safety. He's a
Yeah.
cornerback convert too. And it's a guy who can play pretty much all 5 positions in the secondary. We've talked in the past about Derwin James' role, playing down in the box as a linebacker at times, playing as this nickelback or the safety. You get a guy like Jasir Taylor in the nickelback spot, how he can play as safety. And so this Chargers defense, I mean, they complement each other so well. I think Jesse Minter has had a history of being able to do this with his defenses, and I think he just continues to show why he's one of the best young defensive minds in all of football,
Yeah.
not just college or not just the NFL, all of football really. And it's really interesting because if this Chargers team can really put it all together, which they've shown so far, they can really be a good team down the line.
Yeah.
But we should also take their early wins with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know that their loss against the Steelers was somewhat concerning. Granted, Justin Herbert was injured in that game, but it was concerning in
Joe
the sense
Alt was injured. Rashawn
that
Slater was injured.
absolutely. But
Yeah.
obviously, it should be considered that that was their first big time wins, so to say. Um,
Sure.
we still got to see more from them. That's my point. And of course, their first 2 wins were against a Raiders team that's largely inconsistent and a Panthers team who was playing like the worst team in football over the past 2 weeks until Andy
Yeah,
Dalton
that's true.
performed. More on that later on. As far as other teams I'm going to mention, I'm just going to go shortly over a few notes I have. Um, Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen's playing like the MVP. I think he is the easy front runner for that team. He's carrying them really. They really haven't had that much great offensive production outside of him. Their defense is playing really, really well. So I'll give them that. But this Bills team is pretty much on the back of Josh Allen, who I think if he continues to play like how he's playing, you're looking at a 40 touchdown guy who's probably going to easily win MVP.
Yeah.
Um, the Miami Dolphins, I don't have much to say. This team has kind of been a weird one as far as news headlines, whether it's Tyreek Hill's arrest, which brought a bunch of funny memes and a lot of concern in general. I think just about, kind of resurface the conversation about police brutality. And there were a lot of different interpretations on that. But I think the bigger conversation came a week later when Tua Tagovailoa had his 4th concussion. Obviously, we're wishing him nothing but the best here. At some point, I do feel like someone needs to sit down and have a discussion with him about his NFL career, or at least someone needs to be able to create a plan with him if he still wants. Because at the end of the day, it is his decision whether he wants to play. Someone needs to create a plan to keep him much safer. He's someone who's known for not being able to slide well. Maybe you bring in the Guardian cap, which the NFL obviously legalized earlier in the year, a plan like that to be able to keep a guy as safe as him, because the last thing we want to see is him go through a life, an, a life turning or a turning point in life that ends up, causing him to suffer in the ways that, Junior Seau suffered in his final days on Earth. So, we're wishing nothing but the best for Tua, and hoping that, whatever whatever his decision is, it's for the best in his life. As far as other teams, the New York Jets, they've been surprisingly playing better than I expected, and
Hmm.
Aaron Rodgers has been playing a lot better than I expected. I want to say that if they continue to play like this, especially on offense, they can make a run. They have potential to make a serious run even in the playoffs. Um, I'm not saying
Sure.
Rodgers playing like MVP self, but he's certainly playing good enough to basically get this team to the playoffs. And he's playing a lot better than I would have expected, even as far as what we thought he would play like last year, coming off his horrible 22 season.
Yeah.
At age 40, he's playing as a top 10 quarterback right now, or very close to it. And I think that's good enough to, even with how talented this Jets team is, to make a deep playoff run. We mentioned the Chargers. Um, as far as the Baltimore Ravens, I think you put it on the spot with them. The Baltimore Ravens, I don't think I've ever seen this team as motivated to go out there on a week to week basis and really crush their opponent. Whether they do or not, they have a lot more urgency than I've ever seen since the days of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. Um, and this team really wants to just punch you in the mouth. They try that against the Chiefs. Obviously, the Chiefs were just a little bit better at the worst, most inopportune times. Ravens got screwed by a few calls, and then the ending of that game was just very unlucky. The Raiders game, the Raiders played with as the same amount of urgency, and they were just a trap matchup. I feel for the Ravens. Max Crosby had a field day against Lamar Jackson, and really Lamar couldn't do anything. And then they played really well against Dallas. There are still things that I feel like they need to solve. There are problems they need to solve, but I like what they're doing. If they continue to play like this, they could at least maybe upset the Chiefs. I don't know about winning the Super Bowl, but they can surprise teams with that urgency that they're playing. The Bengals, their offense, I think their offense has been playing a lot better than I expected. I know a lot of people thought higher of Joe Burrow than I did going into this season, but I'm glad it. Joe Burrow has been playing really well the last few games. Hasn't been enough, not always, but I think there's a lot of other things that are bigger problems with the Bengals. Whether it was Jamar Chase costing them on that certain drive, but I think the biggest problem though is their defense right now, with the fact that they're giving up pretty much 300 yards a game. Every time they were able to give Jaden Daniels one of the best rookie performances ever. And granted, that was an amazing performance, but yeah, I think it speaks more about the Bengals defense than anything. You look at the Browns, the Steelers. I'm not really going to mention because you kind of named it on the head there. The Cleveland Browns. Um, this is a team that really just depends on Deshaun Watson actually showing up for once. And it only seems like the only thing he really shows up is in any sort of legal controversy. And frankly, I'm getting sick of it. Whether you think, we're not going to go into the details of it, but when you keep getting these legal controversies against you and you're not performing uh, on the actual NFL field, I mean, it's hard to be able to find any excuse for a guy who's playing that horribly. And one of the worst quarterbacks, really starting quarterbacks in the league,
Yeah.
and you're paying him 45 million a year, $230 million guaranteed. At some point, you got to start wondering whether it's time to just cut loose from him and just take the punishment of the cap hit. Um, this Browns team is a very, very talented team, but they just keep getting held back by their quarterback decisions, and it's honestly frustrating because this is a much more talented team than they show on a week to week basis. As far as the AFC South, we're gonna get to that more in future episodes because there's a lot of interesting things with the rookies and the second year quarterbacks that we have coming up. That division specifically. Um, as far as the NFC East, I think also you mentioned that on the head. NFC West, yeah, the Rams and the 49ers are basically just injury ridden. I think their quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford and Brock Purdy, have played very well. They're We saw the game last week. I think there were a lot of instances where the Niners just kind of put themselves in bad situations, whether it was Ronnie Bell dropping the football or Jake Moody missing a field goal kick. That's something as a Niners fan, I feel like we have to improve. The Rams, similar issues they faced against the Arizona Cardinals, who, by the way, the Cardinals are playing exceptional football with offensively with Kyler Murray. I think it kind of goes to show that Jonathan Gannon is a much better coach than most people have um, have thought of him to be. They are fighting every single week, much like I feel what we saw out of the Lions in 2022. And then you got the Seattle Seahawks, who to me, they're the most interesting team in this division. One thing I kind of shortly mentioned when Mike McDonald got hired in the offseason that I wish I talked about more was their offense, the offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubbs, who I'm a huge fan of. If you want a guy who can make an offense fun to watch, Ryan Grubbs is that guy. Watch the tape of any Washington game in last year or in 2022. Man, Michael Penix throwing deep balls to Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk. It's one of the most fun things you can ever imagine. And they're doing the same thing with the Seahawks. I think one of the big things with Seattle is the fact that Geno Smith has always been one of the more efficient deep ball passers, having one of the best deep yardage passing scores in the league in 2022 and 23. As far as one of the higher, one of the top, he's been top five in air yards per attempt in 2022. Obviously, after losing Dave Canales in 22, he struggled a little bit. Dave Canales helped Baker Mayfield with that. But now you get a guy like Ryan Grubbs who's doing the same thing. And we're seeing a career year out of a guy like DK Metcalf and a career year out of Geno Smith. So I think this, and with Mike McDonald doing what he's doing on that defense with that secondary, this is a dangerous team, and I would really watch out for them. As far as the NFC North, we'll get into that one a little bit down the line. And then as far as the NFC South, I mean, I think you mentioned it on the head with the Saints. Um, the Buccaneers we'll mention shortly after. The Falcons, this is just a very inconsistent team. Kirk Cousins is still kind of recovering from that Achilles injury, but he's playing pretty much like the check down Charlie I've known from years past. If they continue to play like that, yeah, the Falcons are not going anywhere. Um, and then the Panthers, man, I don't know what the hell is going on with that team. They look like one of the worst teams in football. Although last week they had a very good performance against the Raiders, I think that speaks volumes on Andy Dalton compared to Bryce Young being the rookie versus or the young player versus the veteran. But we'll see what the Panthers do down the line and whether they continue to play well with Andy Dalton and how does that affect what Bryce Young looks like in his future with the Panthers. But yeah, those are my overall takeaways kind of for every team in the NFL. And I think again, there's a lot to look out for coming in the following weeks in the NFL. Moving on, we're going to discuss kind of one of the more prevalent questions in the NFL over the last few weeks. Something that kind of breaks my heart being, I know for you, Akhilesh, you're not exactly the guy who likes quarterbacks. For me, being someone who kind of got into the game based on one of my favorite offensive games in NFL history, really on three separate occasions. Um, yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is that this is kind of a disappointing year when it comes to passing yards and overall just the amount of times that players have gone over 300. I can count them on one hand. Um, and it has been a very disappointing year as far as elite passing seasons. Something that we had thought would have been on the contrary this year with the amount of quarterback talent that is in the league right now, given a guy like Patrick Mahomes. Um, and we thought he might be able to break every passing record in the league this year, and he's not even, I don't think, top five in passing yards in the NFL, and no quarterback through three games has reached 1,000 passing yards yet, and that is surprising given how much emphasis we put on the passing game. So Akhilesh, I mean, what are your thoughts
What are
about
your
that?
thoughts? Um, Look, actually, I'm very happy that no quarterback is having 300 yards a game because we make these quarterbacks seem like they're the kings of the world when they're really not. And finally, that's showing up today. It's finally coming up now where we understand quarterbacks are not the kings and queens of the NFL. They're just mere ministers as part of a kingdom, right? That's what these quarterbacks are. Now, we'll dive into this a bit deeper, you and me together. But I think when to start it off, we should start about talking with Patrick Mahomes. Because why? Both of us agreed that we thought he was going to be the MVP. He's going to have the most, he's going to reach 5,000 passing yards. This is what I believed coming into this season.
Right, right.
We thought they were going to have the most electric offense. And if we're really thinking about it, they have one of the most anemic offenses in the NFL right now. Travis Kelce, over 3 games, has 34 yards. Just stop there, right? 99 overall in Madden. You have 34 yards over 3 games. I mean, I get it, Taylor Swift and all, but like still, sheesh, 34 yards is. I mean, I get Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid saying, this guy's so good, they just double cover him over all the time. Sorry, did Tony Gonzalez get double covered on the line by 2 corners by Bill Belichick and still go for 121 yards? I think so. At what age again? Oh, yeah, like 35, 36 maybe, something around there. So, no, we're not taking that as a reason all of a sudden that's why Travis Kelce is having so many low yards. That's not the reason. Second of all, we're seeing the age of the Patrick Mahomes kind of being figured out. I'll explain what that means. I don't think Patrick Mahomes, over the course of 3 games, has had more than 280 yards. That's never happened. Right? If we're being very honest, that's never happened. Now, why? It's because Travis Kelce just can't get that many balls, right? Regardless of the coverage that's on him, he just can't get that many balls. And Patrick Mahomes has to rely on other receivers who are young, who are still up and coming, right? And as a result of that, they're just not really making progress at all. And then when you have refs literally being your teammates, you're always going to get your way through, right? So that's why the Chiefs are 3-0. As far as I see, this offense has been playing horrible for the amount of talent that they have. Why? Now we're going to come to it. Mel Kiper. Now, this individual for ESPN has been a life-changing form for ESPN. He's kind of brought that draft alive. The importance of the draft, how us as teenagers, as just first-year college guys can really make our own stamp on what we think the draft should be, who should go where, why they should go there, etc. and etc. But when we really look at it from a football standpoint, this guy just put a bunch of rubbish, absolute rubbish out there. The cover two should be expelled from the National Football League. Let me give you a bit of a history lesson. Tom Landry in 1952 as part of the New York Football Giants. He was a punt returner and a kicker and a safety for the New York Football Giants, number 49. He developed I believe he developed the cover two defense. If not the cover two defense, he developed the cover four defense, right? This has been a tradition since 1952, and now you want to get rid of it? See, this is a simple thing. This is a real history lesson, guys. When you talk about cover two, Yash, you know to put your input in. I just don't want to keep speaking because I know my voice can sound like a recorded tape. But when we look at the history behind NFL defenses, right? Edging on 2005, right? Other than the Steelers always had this concept. They still continue to play this concept. But they always had the concept of there has to be one free safety up top with one strong safety on the bottom that kind of plays around everywhere, can play a linebacker role, quote unquote, but can also come back up deep as a safety protection. And that strong safety, they had Troy Polamalu, they had now Minka Fitzpatrick kind of plays that role too now. And then you have forgetting the name. He played in the 70s with Chuck. No, Hall of Famer.
What position?
Safety, strong safety.
Oh, Donnie Shell.
Donnie Shell. There we go. Right? These guys, it's been a tradition since the 70s for the Steelers, right? To play that kind of high cover one safety with the under strong safety bottom, kind of rotating around everywhere. That system started getting kind of evolved, developed, and used by other teams. The Patriots started using it a lot in the early to late 2000s. But when it really took off, where everybody started using it, was when the Legion of Boom with Dan Quinn started. That's when that idea of the cover one robber, because when we think of the Legion of Boom, Richard Sherman, fantastic cornerback. You would know as a 49ers
Right.
fan, but
Yeah.
fantastic
Don't
cornerback.
mention. Yeah. Don't
But
mention.
but then you take a look at two guys, Cam Chancellor, again you would know, but and also Earl Thomas, right? These two guys made that cover one happen. Earl Thomas, extremely rangy, quick, versatile, strong, great hands. He would be that upper one safety. Cam Chancellor, strong, big, fast also, right? From side to side range. He would be that strong safety. So when you have that type of makeup, you're afraid to run that ball because that safety could come inside and run at you. And you're afraid to throw the ball because you know that you could lose a player or two, or maybe just lose a bunch of limbs, right? So that's how the Legion of
Ravens
Boom
had
was
a
created.
similar scheme with when they had Bernard Pollard as their safety, and Ed Reed being Ed Reed could just basically fly across either side, and they really did. The thing with Ed Reed is they didn't even really require Bernard Pollard to get back there as much, but when he did, he'd take off some guy's head. And you had the versatility with the Ravens, guys like Dominique Rogers, Cromartie, and there's one other guy I'm probably missing, but Corey Corey Grant, I think, or Corey Williams.
I think it's Corey Williams, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. He had a couple picks against um he had a couple picks against Peyton Manning in that
Yeah,
early.
yeah. I know what you're talking about. Colts, Reggie Wayne on the go route.
Yeah. No, with the Broncos in 2012.
Oh, no, I get what you're saying. The punt return?
Yeah, hold on. Let me tell you what his name was.
Corey Williams. Was it Corey Williams?
Let me give me a sec. I will tell you. Corey Graham. That's his name.
It was Corey Grant. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. So that cover one kind of concept was there with the Legion of Boom. The when it came back to cover two was really when Patrick Mahomes had that all-star season in 2018. 2019, the Denver Broncos implemented that cover two defense with Vic Fangio. That's when this transition where everybody just went cover two started, right? So with that cover two concept, so the idea with the reason why though that cover one didn't work after some time, that we should explain. So there's this concept that some people call the Georgia wheel route. So the idea behind the Georgia wheel route is they essentially will cross two receivers over each other at different levels. So, for example, if I call this the X and I call this the Z, it might be inverted from your angle. Suppose a Z lun. Actually, you know what? Let's do a whiteboard. Um, all right. So here, I should have a pen if I'm not wrong.
I'll draw it
Um,
for you. Let me well.
Actually, I think I got it. Let me see. Yeah, I think I got it. So if we're looking at a playbook standpoint here, um, X and Z, right? So from this standpoint, the Georgia wheel concept is suppose the X runs a route that's maybe 20 yards in, and the Z runs a route that's 15 yards in, right? So if we're putting a concept like this, and now the linebackers, let's say it's a scheme where, let me just change the colors here. It's a scheme where, let's say, the linebackers are kind of playing uh, technology, am I right? Um, Linebackers are kind of playing inside more, right? So they're kind of trying to cover and take over this guy here. Now, the other idea behind this offense would be that there would be another receiver position, let's say the zebra, right? In some playbooks, the West Coast kind of calls it zebra, so we're going to take West Coast. What they would do is the zebra would kind of wrap around the outside and then go deep. So as X is coming in on that wheel route inside, the zebra is kind of coming on the outside wide. Now, when you're playing that cover one robber concept, right? So the free safety is up top here, strong safety is playing here. So the strong safety can play here, he can play here, where he's currently, or he could play sometimes, honestly, right here next to the box. He could laterally move around everywhere. That's that kind of cover one concept. The problem though is that free safety, if he takes up over here, strong safety naturally has to go here. That's what he has to do. The middle linebacker can kind of follow here, but at the same time, running backs, they would usually run slants here or take sometimes even on the go route. So linebackers have to watch this, or cornerback has to watch this. Why I mentioned that? The quarterback, right? He's just going to sling that ball down there. And that's going to get him at least 15 yards or more. Suppose the strong safety says, you know what, I'm not going to take this guy. And suppose, let's say, give another example, the will right here blitzes, right? When that happens, a strong safety, his responsibility is coming and taking that Z route. What happens then? The quarterback hits that 20-yard route, right? That's more dangerous. So the problem with that cover one concept, as you guys can tell, is especially when they run this Georgia wheel, and then you have that zebra on the over, the free safety and strong safety don't know what to do. That's what happens, right? And the problem is depth. Yash, you can also explain more into this, but
Right.
the depth of it is right. The strong safety is going to be more down. The free safety is going to be way too high. So you need to have that perfect depth. I don't really I mean. You look at Mike Tomlin. The reason why people have so much respect for him is he's stuck on to one system and he's always won using that system. Quite incredible how you kind of change within that same system, but you change the aspects of it to kind of fit. It's quite incredible. Now, Yash, if you don't mind, could you explain why now the cover two works better than the cover one in this type of concept, if you don't mind?
Well, I mean, okay, so in the case of what they're doing with cover two is they're basically putting two higher safety. The two safeties are basically much higher in the field. So let me kind of clear this out, kind
Yeah.
of give an idea. Is there a way I can do new whiteboard?
I think you can just go on this one. So the one
Okay.
that I drew up, and then you can.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do a new whiteboard
All right,
just so
perfect.
we get more space to work with. Um, so what you have, right, when you are basically, let's just say this is the offensive line, okay? And then this the defense. Usually you got, I'm gonna talk about this more in a personnel standpoint, just because I'm not as like technical as Akilesh when it comes to
No, no, no!
kind
Don't
of
do
this.
that stuff. Don't do that stuff. Don't do that stuff. Come on.
But what I will say is usually, so what teams used to do in the past was when it came to defense was they usually add three linebackers because as we know, prior to the late 90s, early 2000s, passing wasn't nearly as usable of a style in offense as it is today, right? So oftentimes you get those three linebackers to play in the league, and as the league evolved in the early 2000s, you got a lot of teams getting those three receiver sets, right? So in under that circumstance, being that you have 11 men, you have these seven players who are just kind of your standard seven base, but you also got that nickelback now and the two boundary cornerbacks. And usually that one safety is that nickelback cornerback. Or in more advanced cases, he's playing as a box safety where you take out that linebacker. Now, in the game where basically rushing has been pretty much taken out completely, whether it's the value of the running back or kind of just the versatility of a running back, being that you got guys like Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara who are more of these rather than just kind of a bell cow running back, they're
I,
more of these guys who can line up as a slot receiver themselves. So really, the only guy you got is the quarterback in the backfield. And anyways, the position of fullback has pretty much completely died out. So you look at a team like I look at a team like the 2021 Rams, and I think they kind of set the standard for this. Um, Being that number one, they had so much demand for their quarterback, right? In a guy like Matthew Stafford. But then if you even look at some of the schemes that they were doing, they would pretty much have just two wide receivers plus a tight end. So they pretty much have five guys just running routes for the quarterback, and Matthew Stafford would be in shotgun the whole time, dropping back and just throwing to whoever. And Matthew Stafford had more shotgun snaps than anyone in the league in the past 10 years when they started recording that stat. I think the guy who had more shotgun snaps prior to him was Philip Rivers in 2010 or 2011, if I'm correct. Um, but And then Aaron Rodgers was also a little bit higher in certain instances. And we know that's because the
Aaron
Packers
Rodgers.
have always never in their new era haven't necessarily prioritized a running back as much as they used to back in the 60s with Vince Lombardi. But under this circumstance, because you have those two linebackers, a lot of teams, what they'll do is one of those linebackers will be a pure coverage linebacker. I think of a team like the 49ers, for instance. Fred Warner, he's a do-it-all linebacker, but he's primarily used for his covering skill set. You get a team that will often have a spy as a linebacker. So a guy like Roquan Smith is that for the Ravens. He was even more of that in the case of when he played for the Bears. And then you got a guy who generally is that run stopper as such, right? So a guy like Devondre Campbell for the 49ers right now, or what he was with the Packers. Danny Trevathan was that when Roquan Smith was with the Bears. So what that does really is that puts a lot of pressure on this one linebacker. As a result, in a cover two scheme, what you're basically doing is putting all the emphasis on those two safeties over here, right? So now what that does is because you have five defensive backs playing pretty much deep against teams like the Kansas City Chiefs specifically, with a quarterback as talented as throwing the ball deep as Patrick Mahomes, what that does is with the one run stuffing linebacker who kind of plays in this area, and the one linebacker who usually is either covering, if it's a man-to-man scheme, covering the tight end, right? Or if it's a zone scheme, kind of just dropping back and kind of zoning this second area. What that does is leaves a lot of open space in the middle of the field for and a lot of teams will do crossing routes with their tight ends. A team like the Chiefs that plays perfectly in a guy like Travis Kelce's skill set, and what they'll end up doing is just kind of
Josh,
to the middle of the field.
sorry, Josh. I don't want to interrupt you here, but so you're saying they'll play more crossing routes in a cover two?
Crossing routes, yeah. As far as not deep crossing routes, but very shallow ones.
Hmm.
You're talking about I forget the name of the route.
Slants,
No, not a slant. Um, I'll tell you if I remember, but I can't remember the name of the route. But
comebacks, digs.
no, it's not one of those. I'll tell you if hold on. Let me give you the name for a sec.
Hmm. Kind of did. Actually, I think I might disagree with you here.
Hold up.
With
Give me
that, co-
a sec.
with the cover two
Oh
defense,
yeah, you're right.
short
It's a dig route. Yeah.
dig route, right?
Yeah.
The dig routes, I actually might disagree. With the cover two defense, you actually have an advantage to those dig routes. Reason why I say that is you could go a bunch nickel, right? With Jesse Minter, he's
Right.
taking that cover two, but he's going bunch nickel, right? So when you have a bunch of nickel, you're able to dominate on the inside a lot more. We have lateral speed, right? So you're
Right.
you're not necessarily concerned about the strength. You have lateral speed, so you're able to dominate those dig routes inside. Last year, Baltimore against the Kansas City Chiefs, or Chiefs against the Baltimore Ravens. Since the Baltimore Ravens completely lost their mind instead of running the ball, they went to that pass heavy offense. No,
Right.
I'm so sick about that stupid. I don't know what playbook happened there. All of a sudden, they threw their playbook that they had all season long, brought in this new playbook from, I don't know, the 2001 Rams, if you wanted, for God's sakes, and then start running all these itty bitty routes. It was
Or
okay.
throwing the game harder than the 1919 Black Sox.
Yeah, I wouldn't know about them because I was born way, way after that. But still, a horror show when that happened. But you look at what Spags did, right? All he did was kept it very simple. He just employed that defense, but they ran all these dig routes that covered nickel. And the nickel over top was just able to come in, swat all those balls that were out there, right?
Right.
So I don't know if dig routes are advantageous when it
It's
comes to
not,
that cover
yeah,
two.
100%. It's not always advantageous because, again, like you said, in the case, a lot of the time the nickel has that opportunity there. But at the same time, that's also, I think, because you get a lot more, in this day and age with the cornerbacks with their athletic ski with their versatility. We talked about a guy like Jasir Taylor earlier. L'Jarius Sneed is in that
Yeah,
same mold. A lot of these nickel cornerbacks are safety converts. Kyle Duggar is another instance of that.
yeah.
Um, And for a lot of that, that basically provides a lot of versatility in the same way that we were talking about how a safety would end up dropping in the 2000s to basically be the nickel cornerback. Now you have nickel cornerbacks, that's their primary concern, but they can do so much with the versatility of schemes. Either way, what it does as the end of the point is when you have these dig routes, that might not be as such advantageous, but it's the most advantageous thing you could get in a too high safety scheme, and that just prevents a larger depth of target. And we were talking about the depth of target. I mean, you could talk about. I'm going to clear this for a sec.
Here, hold up 1 second. You can just create one more whiteboard.
I'm just going to
Um,
erase it.
okay.
It's fine. Yeah, so like in when you look at a team like, we were talking about the crossing routes, a team like the New Orleans Saints, for instance, one of their big things was they always had one receiver who was amazing at vertical routes, whether that's post routes or that's just straight go routes, right? I think of a guy like, for instance, Devery Henderson. Later on, it was Ted Ginn Jr. Brandon Cooks was that for a couple of years,
Yep.
and then they had Emmanuel Sanders, I think, for a little bit too. Um,
Yeah.
and oftentimes, what you get in that scheme is basically that
Ooh,
I don't know what the hell happened
crispy
there, but
routes, man.
yeah, but what you okay, I don't know what the hell's going on. Okay, give me a second.
Yeah, those are some good routes. No, Quitos, Quitos. Those are some
Well,
good
these
routes.
aren't routes either way, but what I'm trying to basically prove is that this safety will be able to kind of cover the field in a lot of instances on that deep route. This is an instance of why a play like the Minneapolis Miracle was possible, because you got a guy like Marcus Williams, who's pretty much that final line of defense over there, right? And what happens is when Stefon Diggs catch the ball and Marcus Williams missed the tackle, there's nobody left there. Whereas versus a team like the Legion of Boom, one thing that was probably the most dangerous thing about them is Earl Thomas was a freak of nature, right? As far as his ability to be able to just fly across the line. But one thing that I took away always was a guy like Rob Gronkowski, for instance. When the Patriots played um, the Seahawks, right? I'm gonna clear this. Give me a sec. Um, yeah, a guy like Rob Gronkowski with his versatility to either play
Yeah,
inside or outside like that, right? You always saw Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor hit him.
yeah,
Rob Gronkowski being one of the best tight ends in the league and best tight ends in the league ever, and one of the what's it called? One of the strongest and most dangerous weapons you get. Either Earl Thomas would basically be in his grill trying to catch that ball or hit him, and if he didn't hit him, Cam Chancellor would basically land the finishing blow. And that's what you saw with a lot of tight ends who would be either good at that crossing route or they'd be good on that out route. A guy like Vernon Davis, I look at. And that's why even bigger receivers like like a guy like Calvin Johnson was known for his ability to play on deep routes. But against a team like the Seahawks, he'd always play those dig routes, those smaller crossing routes, things like that, right? So I think what most teams have figured out is with the amount of talent that we have at the position right now and the amount of teams that have such ability with their quarterbacks, not just as far as deep ball throws, whether it's Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, you get four different types of quarterbacks, a guy who's known for his rushing, but is able to, keep the defense on its feet because he can also throw the ball very efficiently, like a Lamar Jackson, or a guy on the opposite end, like Josh Allen, who's prone to throwing, but he's what's it called? He keeps the defense on his toes because of his throwing ability, but he can run if he has to. And then Mahomes being that kind of that playmaker and Matthew Stafford being more of that pocket player, right? You get all these different varieties, but at the end of the day, the one thing that they have in common is their ability to be able to throw the ball deep. I think the prioritization of that, I think it's almost contradictory to what a lot of coaching schemes have. And what I
mm,
mean by that is that the West Coast offense is more prevalent than it's ever been. The
Yeah.
West Coast offense, the biggest thing about the West Coast offense, what is that, Akhilesh?
Well, I think personally it's get the ball out quick and then make the receiver run
Correct.
instead of you throwing the ball more deep and then getting towards the ball.
Correct. So it's contradictory to the skill set of a lot of these teams. Now, granted, you're still going to get those big plays, whatnot, but that's going to be a lot harder in a cover two scheme. And when these cover two schemes continue to happen, and on top of that, you add in the fact that unlike a team like the 49ers back in the 80s, most teams don't have a significant run game anymore. And the versatility of these running backs playing more receiver, right? That ends up playing against quarterbacks being able to get these big yardage games. So if anything, either quarterbacks are going to have to start running the ball a lot more, which is probably not going to happen because of the
No.
safety and the investment most teams make in their quarterbacks, or the running back is going to have to start becoming a bigger position and more valued position again in order for this deep ball
That's what's going to happen.
stuff to happen.
That's
But
exactly what's going to happen.
we're not
See,
at that point.
this is the thing, though. See, this is the thing. Now, coming back to the rubbish Mel Kiper put out there, right? The ultimate thing is yes, it's going to become much more boring. From an average football fan standpoint, it's going to become a much more boring game because instead of seeing 21 for 33, 345 yards passing, 115 QBR, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, it's going to be 180 yards, 12 off 15, 66 quarterback rating. I don't know if that's possible. I'm just spewing out numbers at this point. But 3 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, and it's going to be instead of 8 carries for 58 yards, it's going to be 16 carries for 122 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's the type of game it's going to be. Why? I'm going to quote Mr. Bill Belichick on this, who I, for God's sakes, hope will never become the Cowboys head coach because I'll have to support those ding dong Cowboys if he does. But when you play the cover two defense, what's the one thing you can do? What's the one thing you can do?
What is it? Go ahead.
I'm asking you, what's the one thing you can do? If a cover two defense is there, what's the one thing you can do? And it's really not a complicated answer. It's no routes or this. It's a very
You
easy
run the
answer.
ball.
Run the football down their throats. It's the easiest thing to do. Why? Well, I mean, Yash kind of explained this before. If the offensive line is all the way here, your running backs all the way here. You got linebackers, you got this and that. You got
Unless
probably
you're gonna have to move a little more left on the board. We
or
can't see otherwise.
can you see this now?
No,
No, you can't. Okay.
just
Um,
go to like yeah, go to where my routes are. I'll erase it for you.
you can move the whiteboard too.
I'm not able
Actually.
to, right? So
Oh, okay. Got it. No problem. Um, but yeah. So I'll draw this. Can you see this now?
yeah, you're on the wide left. Yeah, there you go.
All right. You're good. Okay. If I look at it from this angle, right, the running back's all the way here. If I play the cover two defense, the middle linebackers here.
Oh wait, now I can't see it. Yeah. Yeah, you're a little too left. Just go like hold up. I'm gonna draw a line to show you. Like that line, that's the middle of the whiteboard.
That's the middle. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, no. Okay. But the essential idea is right. What what we're trying to understand here is so if I draw up the offensive line, hope this is working now, Yash. Um, the middle linebackers here, Sam, Will. These terms don't worry about. They're essentially just linebackers. That's all. Most teams are running the double tight end at this point, right? So the tight end will block one linebacker. Tight end will block another one. The tackle may guard that inside defensive end. The center may come on a double block on the tackle and then go towards that middle linebacker. Or the guard may come on in the inside. He might go there, right? So there's a plethora of options for the blocking scheme. So essentially, what happens with that is all these linebackers are taken care of. So who is left to tackle? Cornerbacks can't tackle them. I'll tell you that much. If you put Derrick Henry on a cornerback, we've seen what happens. The only thing you have left are these free safeties up top. And they're so far away that you give this running back a little hole in that inside, he's getting about 10 yards easy. So this is what Bill Belichick was saying. is that the moment this type of thing, is employed, right? Essentially, what happens is you can run the ball all day. That's what teams are doing. That's why you see lower yards of passage in the NFL. It's very simple, right? Because when you have that cover two defense, it's completely stopping you from allowing that yardage to go deep. When you talk about the Los Angeles Chargers, right? When Brandon Staley was there, passing yardage wise, we weren't that bad actually. We were ranked near the top 10 passing yardage wise. Every passing category from a defensive standpoint, we were ranked top 10, right? But when you look at it from a run standpoint, we were so horrible that that's why our defense was always trash from a number standpoint because we just got ran everywhere. We couldn't stop the run. The underlying cause for the failure of our defense was the fact that we couldn't stop the run. Why? That cover two. It's very simple. So that cover two defense, it allows for the running much, much more. That's why the Baltimore Ravens were as successful as they were last season. If we were still in an age where the passing offense is still expected and that cover one type thing is there, Lamar Jackson would be a below average quarterback. I'm just putting it out there, right? The reason why he's as good as he can be is because this type of defense is there for him to experiment on. But again, that's why when we look at nickelbacks, before we would think of nickelbacks as thinner versions of cornerbacks. That's the thought process that most people thought. Now nickelbacks are almost hybrid linebackers, right? The kind of guy I think about is Isaiah Simmons. He was initially coming out of Clemson University.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking of
Got
Owusu Koromoa.
Kormoa.
Yeah.
These type of guys could play that nickel position because they're quick, lateral. One thing I can say in terms of that kind of hybrid linebacker, Kyle Hamilton is the perfect example of that. He is the perfect example of a hybrid linebacker. He's a guy who can play deep if need be, play inside, can tackle. He is that type of hybrid linebacker you want, right? He can play anywhere. That's why Jesse Minter, when we look at this defense, why it's so successful, he has big guys playing nickel, big, strong guys playing nickel because he knows that when we play the cover two, we got to guard that run on the
Right.
inside. Mel Kiper mentioned this. I think it was with Greeny, if I'm not wrong. Guys, by the way, if you guys want to get us on a show, I really don't mind anytime soon. Just few million on
Please,
the
yeah.
side. I don't mind. I don't mind 100,000 on the signing bonus. I don't mind. It could be anything, but you could get us on a show. It would be amazing. But nevertheless, when it comes to Greeny and Mel Kiper, my problem with the entire thing was he mentioned an actual good point though. He said that when you have the cover two, you have nobody inside to stack the box other than those three linebackers who get completely blocked because that offensive line is there,
Which is
right?
often two now too. So
Which is often two now, exactly. But when you have nickelbacks like the Ravens do, like the Chargers are getting to, you have big, strong guys that can take these running backs out. They have the ability to take those running backs out. That's why I feel that the cover two defense shouldn't be out of the game. It's making the game harder. Now, Andy Reid or some offensive genius can solve this out, then we're moving on to the next defense. It's an evolution time period. You can't complain about evolution. It's natural selection. It's genetic drift. It's genetic mutations, right? If you guys are wondering what I'm now, I had a biology test last week. I'm sorry. What can I do? I'm in college. You got to live through it, right? But the point is, evolution is needed in order for progression in anything. And right now, we're seeing the evolution of that cover two defense destroying offenses. Now, the question is, what are offenses going to do? That's what we're getting to. Is the West Coast offense going to help? I think it can. We're seeing the Kansas City Chiefs kind of taking on that West Coast type offense, but how far can we take it to? That's an exciting question that I can't wait for. So that's kind of our way of looking from a film standpoint, a strategy, X's and O's standpoint of why that cover two is going to be that base mantle for defenses to come for easily the next decade or so.
I 100% agree. At the end of the day, there's no need to be able to um, ban cover two. I think of baseball, a lot of the times they make a lot of the rule changes end up making the sport almost artificial in entertainment, whether it's the juiced home run balls in 2019 or whether that's the sticky tack and kind of like the look away about the sticky tack in baseball in 2021, and it overall I feel ends up tending to what's it called? It tends to limit the ability of the fan to be able to understand the true skill set from an era to era basis of how the sport has evolved.
Yeah.
Most people don't understand why Babe Ruth is better or worse, if you think so, than Barry Bonds or Hank Aaron, because they played in different eras with different contributions. Barry Bonds played in an era where steroids was widely accepted, and Barry Bonds and Babe Ruth played at a time where baseball was widely segregated. So,
Yeah.
and that's just more of the extreme example. And we're only looking at this from a technical standpoint as far as how the sport looks like, as far as schemes and rules and whether they should ban that. And I certainly don't think that will be the case, because then it kind of destroys the integrity of how the sport evolves and how kind of pretty much the chess match that makes football such an amazing sport.
Yeah. No doubt.
All right, guys, so we're back. As you could probably tell, this is a little later in our recording, actually 2 weeks later. Not much has changed as far as some of the storylines we wanted to discuss. A couple things have changed, specifically a lot with the New York Jets, which before we'll get into the last part of what we have been recording in this episode, we will talk about, because there was one specific headline that happened this week that got a lot of attention for a bunch of different reasons. And given Akhilesh and I have probably talked about this team more than any other team since we started our podcast back in July 2023, I think it's only fitting once again to end the madness with yet another headline from the New York Jets. So Akhilesh, take it away.
Yeah. I have a lot of opinions on this. Um, and I hope this would be a back and forth when it comes to this topic. I think the firing of Robert Saleh was a horrible decision that I'm not surprised of. I'll keep it as that. Now, let's start off with Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh over the past 4 years is a 23, and I'll pull up the record actually right now. Robert Saleh's record as a New York Jets head coach of the New York Jets was, I believe, record. He was 20 and 36 over 56 games, right? Just nearly around 4 seasons. That's the worst apparent from I remember from watching ESPN. Don't take my word for it, but I think that was one of the worst records a franchise as part of a head coach of the New York Jets. So it's one of the worst records that anybody's had in the history of the Jets.
And that's saying something, given it's the Jets.
I'll mention that point. I'll mention that point again because this is how the media really twists things. I'll mention that point again. Now you have that in play. Robert Saleh he's never had a winning season in his entire career. And he's had stellar talent over stellar talent again and again and again. Now, this, ladies and gentlemen, is what the media wants to propel to you. He's a bad coach. He's not at all good at what he does. He's a great man. He's a great person. He's really kind, really all of this, but he's just not a good head coach. Let me explain something to the general media here. I'll go back to the previous point. Remember how I mentioned that Robert Saleh had the worst record of any Jets coach who has coached for more than 4 years within the organization?
Yeah.
Josh, tell me one thing. When's the last time the Jets went to a Super Bowl?
The last time the Jets went to a Super Bowl was back in 1969. And let me
19.
put that in context for a quick sec. 1969 was the year that our president was Lyndon B. Johnson. That was 10 presidents ago. That was the year that Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. That was the year that the top artists on the planet were the Beatles, Marvin Gaye, Led Zeppelin, and Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Those two two of those artists are not alive anymore, or in the case of the Beatles, are dismembered because two of their band members are dead and two of their band members are damn near 80, and the other
Mm-hmm.
two are in their late 80s, early 90s. So
Mm-hmm.
that goes to show you.
Yeah, let me mention another thing. So you went outside football. I'll mention football. The leading passer in 1969 had 2,200 yards.
100% correct.
That's how old this is, right? That's how old this is. Now, for that same franchise that hasn't had more than 10 playoff wins in over 50 years, with that franchise, is that what we're comparing Robert Saleh to? That's not at all fair, man. This franchise has been a loser franchise for time and eternity. The only time when this franchise had any relevance in the NFL was when Rex Ryan was able to coach his team to two consecutive playoff seasons where they were a monster defense with Darrell Rivas, especially in '09 and '10, and a lucky quarterback that all of a sudden was making these incredible plays with a LaDainian Tomlinson who was nearing the end of his career, but still being able to make those plays. Although Rex Ryan, what are you doing on first down, first and goal at the 1 yard line against the Pittsburgh Steelers and not running the football with a man who has the second most touchdowns in NFL history? What are you doing, sir? But regardless of that, this has been a loser franchise. And that's what we're putting Robert Saleh to. That's why he's a bad coach. Let me explain another thing. Let me explain another thing here. Robert Saleh, when he entered the New York Jets had the worst offense in the NFL, had the worst defense in the NFL. Over the past three consecutive seasons, the New York Jets have had a top 10 defense in every major defensive statistical category. This season, before he got fired, they were allowing less than 18 points a game on defense, championship defense, allowing less than 175 yards passing a game, championship defense, allowing Sam Darnold to having two interceptions. If I'm not wrong, I think he had two interceptions against the New York Jets. Having his worst game of the year, undoubtedly his worst game of the year, and a lucky win against a anemic offense, which I'll get to later on. Yash, this will be a tyrant. So if you want to interrupt, get back at me. I don't care. I really don't, because this will be a tyrant.
Well, I
Okay,
will say this. You're 100% right with everything you've said so far, but let me add to a couple points that you've talked about.
go ahead.
What you talked about the media was spot on. But let me put it this way. This is the best way I can talk about the New York Jets. The New York Jets are the most dysfunctional organization in the NFL.
Yeah.
Certainly the NFL. They might be also the most dysfunctional organization in sports. And that's not from a current standpoint. That's from a historic standpoint.
Ooh,
We
okay.
could talk about the Knicks. Say what you want about the Knicks. They've at least historically had two championships.
Yeah.
They've at least had
Now,
in the last 20 years, they've at least had their moments of success.
see, what I'll say about the Knicks is, sorry, I don't mean like.
Go ahead.
I guess I mean to interject. It's fine, but when it comes to New York Knicks, we got to remember when Patrick Ewing was there, those teams made it to NBA Finals, Eastern Conference Finals very regularly.
And it's not just
Stephen A.
that.
Smith was having a ball.
And it's
See, the
not just
moment
that.
Stephen A. Smith lost hair was the moment they started making the playoffs.
Well, it's not just
That man
that.
lost
The
hair.
reason the reason they started falling apart really was when James Dolan took over the team in 1999. And for our basketball
I
fans,
like it. I
or for our
like it. I
football
like
fans
the
who
way you're
don't
going. I
necessarily know
like the way you're
about
going.
the basketball side of it, they've at least still had moments of success. We've seen what the Knicks have done over the last couple of years. We
Yeah.
saw what the Knicks did in the early 2010s with Carmelo Anthony and Jeremy Lin and those guys. So they've had their moments of success. The same thing could be said about Washington, even though they've been more dysfunctional. Historically, they have not been. We know about Joe Gibbs. We know how much of a big fan you are of Joe Gibbs, right?
Best of
So
all time.
so historically speaking, they're not that dysfunctional. And I can bring up several other organizations in sports that are dysfunctional. My Oakland
Yeah.
Athletics in baseball, the Ottawa
Horrible.
Senators in hockey.
Horrible.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many instances of teams I can probably bring up to you, but at least they've had their moments. The New York Jets have been the same version of the same team since their inception in 1960. And frankly, there are only few moments of luck. There have only been two true eras, quote unquote. And I could put eras in air quotes because those eras were 2 years for both of them. The New York Jets had two eras, which were defined by poor quarterback play, okay, a very talented run game that never got talked about enough and never got enough credit,
Yeah.
an offensive line which was one of the best in the league but never got paid like the best in the league, and a defense that carried them most of the time. That has been their
Very good
that
points.
has been
Yeah.
their history from 1960. The New York Jets, Joe Namath didn't win that game. As much as you want to talk about his guarantee against the Colts and whatnot, that's historic. but he didn't win that game. The running back, I
No.
forget his name, but the running back and the defense won that game for them. They held Johnny Unitas and the Colts to 7 points.
Yeah.
You talk about the 80s. That defense was carried by Mark Gastineau and that one safety. Again, I'm for blanking. I don't pay attention that much to the Jets because
Jets. To the Jets. No one does.
no one does unless you're a diehard Jets fan because of how dysfunctional this team is. 2009, that Jets defense. We talk about Darrell Revis. We talk about some of the what's it called? Who's that? We talk about some of the defensive guys they had up front. Um,
That was a
the O
monster
line, I mean, was
defense.
one of the most underrated offensive lines in the league. DeBrickashaw Ferguson, Nick Mangold. They never got paid like that. They never got paid high top end money. But everyone talked about Mark Sanchez like he was a franchise quarterback.
He
This
wasn't
man was the worst quarterback in the league statistically by QBR and whatnot. And you could
anything.
argue that he wasn't or whatnot, but he was still one of the worst. And then that got exposed a few years later. The running game was led by Thomas Jones and what's his name? LaDainian Tomlinson at the back end of his career. No one talked about that. That's been the Jets over the last 10 years, too. The
See,
thing that,
here's the thing when it comes to New York Jets, man. Reminds me of the Brooklyn Nets. It's the same deal. Same deal.
yeah,
You look at the roster that they have right now, and it's a head coach's fault. Now, Brooklyn Nets is a little different. You don't put Steve Nash, a guy who's never known head coaching and who knows how to get 15 assists and somehow beat Shaq for MVP. Shaq, if you're listening to this, I'm all with you, big man. You deserve that MVP more than anybody else on that planet. And Steve Nash, how he got it, I don't know. But I fully,
oh
fully
man,
am
if
with
we had
you
a
on that.
basketball podcast, we would be going
No,
off on this topic because I disagree with you on that.
You,
That's a topic for a different day.
no. This is why it's a delusional thing. 15 assists, number one record in the Western Conference. Where did that get them? Where did
Highest
that get
war
them?
in the
Where did
league.
that get them? Where
The
did that get
highest war
them?
in the league.
Where
Better
did that
free throw
get them?
percentage, better 3 point
Don't
percentage.
care. Free throw percentage? Who
More
cares
points per
about free throw
game. He
percentage?
was creating more points than Shaq.
Shaq's not a free throw guy.
Shaq wasn't even the best player on his team at the time. Dwayne
Oh,
Wade
you're
was.
joking. Ah, get out of here.
Absolutely.
Get out of here. 26 points, 15 rebounds a game, and not the best player on his
No
team.
assists. I'm sorry. Dwayne Wade also had 26 points per game, and he
I
had
don't.
10 assists per game, and he had steals,
So
more blocks as a shooting guard.
More steals, more steals,
Yeah.
more steals. Is so we're putting a fat man Shaq, and we're expecting to get steals all of a sudden. When he
Dwayne
was
Wade
on the
had more
Lakers, we expected
blocks,
him
and
to
he
get
was a
steals.
shooting guard than Shaq.
What when we expected? Did we expect Shaq to get steals when he was on the Lakers?
He was an easier defensive player. He was a better defensive player than Shaq. Dwayne
And
Wade. He was a better all-around player than Shaq.
no, oh,
That
so
is,
if I tell you right now, greatest players of all time, you're gonna put Dwayne Wade ahead of Shaq.
I'm not saying Shaq all time is worse than Dwayne Wade, but what I'm saying is at that specific point in time,
Nah, get out
Dwayne
of
Wade
here.
was certainly
Get
better
out
than
of
him.
here. Get out of
You're
here.
putting
You're telling
Lakers
me
Shaq against
wait,
Dwayne Wade? Sure.
no. You're telling me this. If Shaq wasn't on that Miami team, Dwayne Wade would have carried them to that championship.
No, but I don't think. But that's
Exactly.
okay. But
So
that's
keep your
okay. But
mouth
that's like
quiet and
no, no,
let's
no.
move
But
on.
hold up.
Come
But
on.
that's like saying that. What's it called?
Yeah.
That's like saying that. Oh, Shaq would have won those 3 championships with the Lakers without Kobe, or Kareem
No,
won
he
those three
wouldn't.
championships without Magic,
He
or
wouldn't.
what's it called? Bill Russell would have won those 11 championships that he did without Bob Cousy. No, none of them.
Sure. Fine. No. But you're twisting the narrative. See, you're taking the best player and then adding the not the best
Because
player on that
Dwayne
team to
Wade
make
was
sure
the
they win.
best
He
player
wasn't the best player.
on that
That's
Heat
my
team.
point. That's my
Absolutely.
point. He wasn't the best player.
He's the guy who took them from one of the worst five teams in the
See.
league to the playoffs and the set and what's it called? They were the what's it called? The
Uh-huh.
in the Western or the Eastern Conference semifinals. And
Yep.
that
Yep.
even after Shaq left.
Yeah.
And they were
Uh-huh.
constantly contending for
Mm.
championships. Okay?
But you
Shaq was
see,
just
here's the
what
difference.
Shaq was
No, no,
just
no,
the
no, no,
last
no.
piece of the puzzle.
I get. But
Yeah.
see, this is what you're missing, though. This is what you're missing, though. You're contending. The championship's here. We're contending. Championship's here, though. This is like saying the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills were a great all-time team, man, but no one talks about
Okay,
them because they were
so by
contenders.
that argument, we should make Chris Paul the MVP in the 2018 season. All right, by that
Why?
argument,
Why?
let's say that Randy Moss is the MVP in 2007 over Tom Brady if we're talking football.
First of all, that can't happen because we treat quarterbacks like they're some kind of royal king from the 1700s. That's the
True,
way
true,
we
true. But
always
I'm
do.
just
That's not
saying,
a fair argument by
most
any
people would still
measures.
argue that Brady did.
Jerry Rice, based off his statistics, should have gotten an MVP at one point in that time in his career.
All right.
That never got happened. So let's stop with that whole argument. Let's bring it back to the NBA. I know we're not a football podcast, but I'm still sticking with this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said my
No,
case.
No, you didn't. I said,
Yes.
okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me just break this down to you. Dwayne Wade, all of a sudden, who has never been the best player on his team apart from Chicago for about 2 to 3 years, and after that he went
Jimmy
bazooka
Butler
and
was the
went back
best
to
player on
Cleveland.
that team.
All right,
Jimmy Butler
no,
was the
he
best.
wasn't.
On
Dwayne Wade was for about a
Chicago.
year. For
On
a year,
Chicago.
Dwayne Wade was for about a year, and then Jimmy Butler took the reins. It is true.
Jimmy
You can
Butler
say
was
what you want.
Dwayne Wade was on Chicago for only 1 year.
That's my point. He was that 1 year. He was
No,
that
he
player.
wasn't. Oh my
Yeah, he
God.
was. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. You know he
Nah,
was.
nah, you're
You know
tripping,
he
dog.
was.
You're
You know he was.
tripping.
When LeBron was there, Dwayne Wade wasn't the best player on his team. When Dwayne
That
Wade
I
was
agree
ending
with.
near his
Yeah.
career, he wasn't the best player on his team. When Dwayne Wade was with Shaq, Charles Barkley, I love you. I
Okay, so then
really
why did
do.
Dwayne Wade win the Finals MVP? Why did Dwayne Wade be the one who was
Hold
doing
up, hold up,
all the
hold up, hold
work
up.
in the
Hold up,
conference
hold up.
finals and the finals?
I do want to research one thing. I do want to research one thing. Because I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Just give me 1 second.
Go ahead.
Damn, he had a pretty good Finals MVP run.
Yeah, yeah. Who's
But that
speaking
doesn't
that one?
discourage him from being the best. But that's not that. But that's my point. You're the best player in the NBA Finals. Yeah, that's a Finals MVP, not a regular season MVP, bro. Two
Also, look at
completely
look at
different
the
things.
regular
Two
season
completely
stats.
different things.
Let's look at the
This
regular
is like
season.
saying Embiid actually deserved the MVP over Jokic.
No, that I agree with. And Jokic deserved the MVP over Embiid.
Shaq dominated. See,
Not in
this is what you're doing though. This
2006.
you're
He
being the media
dominated.
right now.
He
You're
not
being
he
the media
dominated
right now.
2000 to 2002.
You're being the media right now. You're being the media right now.
Not at
You're
all.
essentially saying, yeah, you are. You're making this argument instead of Shaq versus Steve Nash in a Shaq versus Dwayne Wade. My
Go ahead.
bad, bro. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no,
I'm
you're
talking
good. No,
too
no,
loud.
it's
My
just
bad.
my roommate came in. You're good.
No bad. Um. Okay. Well, back to this topic. You know you're wrong. You know you're wrong. Now, I will say, Dwayne Wade had a pretty good run in the NBA Finals. I gotta admit, against the Dallas washed Mavericks team. But, anyways, we'll continue. I'll give that to you, man. That was a 34.7 assists, 3 rebounds a game. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Um. Okay, when it comes to New York Jets, next thing I'll highlight, Woody Johnson is the reason for the New York Jets' failure. He
100%.
has been the repeated cause. What do you mean on the telephone line when you say, I've been thinking about this for a couple of years? What do you mean? What do you mean a couple of years?
Can I explain that actually? Can it be because
Yeah.
I think I could provide context for that. I'm not justifying it, but I do think I could provide context for it. This is
Mm,
based on reports I've seen and whatnot from the
okay.
looks of it. And this isn't just kind of a hypothesis I have that I'm basing off of certain reports that I've seen. So a couple reports came out, a specific article by The Athletic that talked about how Joe Douglas and Woody Johnson had a rift over who they should, what their quarterback vision looked like after the 2022 season. The thing
Okay.
with the Jets was we have to remember the Jets had a spectacular 2022 NFL draft, right?
Yeah.
This was, we're talking about a team that is carried by their defense. This team, their defense was way ahead of schedule. This was a young defense that was made of a lot of free agents and a lot of draft moves um, that showed up way quicker than expected. Guys like Sauce Gardner, guys like Jermaine Johnson, etc. The run game was also very, very good at this point. Brees Hall was
Yeah.
playing exceptional football. Then he tore his ACL. Zach Wilson was given the reins. He had one really, really horrible game and quite a few other lackluster performances
No,
based
no,
of
no, 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 no. Sorry, I'm interrupting you here. You are not honey bunnying the situation right now. There is no way we're taking Zach Wilson and saying, oh, he had a couple of bad games. He is an atrocious quarterback.
Oh
He's
no,
an
no, I'm not. I'm no,
atrocious
no, no, no. Don't get
quarterback.
me wrong. I am not. I am not. I'm not saying that Zach Wilson's not terrible. I'm just saying you
Okay,
compare the Patriots game to all the others. That Patriots
okay,
game was really, 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 really awful.
okay.
Right.
Fair.
So
Okay.
that was the game that everyone knows. That was the game that basically lost him the job for the Jets. Right.
Yeah.
Not just the game, but the post game interview and whatnot. Right. But there was an article that came out with the New York Jets. In the following offseason talking about how Joe Douglas and Woody Johnson had differences when it came to their vision of what they should do with the quarterback. Woody Johnson apparently had a good relationship with Aaron Rodgers from meetings that they'd have in the past. things like that. I'm not entirely sure about that. I'm not an NFL insider, obviously, but that was kind of the main premises of it.
Sure.
When it came to Joe Douglas, he was actually thinking more of going for a cheaper quarterback like a Derek Carr, signing him potentially a 1 year contract for lesser money than what Aaron Rodgers is worth, and then potentially looking to the 2024 draft and drafting one of the quarterbacks in this loaded class.
Hmm.
Um, what ended up happening is Woody Johnson played a power move on him. They got Aaron Rodgers. There was something that one of the ESPN analysts in talking about this actually made a good point. I don't remember who it was. It might have been Shannon Sharp.
Okay.
He talked about basically Aaron Rodgers became the least important person in the organization. And this has happened before in the Jets organization. And that does not mean that he's the worst person in the organization, but what the idea of what they were saying is that he basically became expendable, right?
Wait. Aaron Rodgers is the least important
No, no, no,
person
no, no,
within the.
not Aaron, Robert Saleh.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Oh my God,
That's
you
what
got me there.
no, no, no.
Okay,
So what that's what Shannon Sharp was explaining in that. I
yeah.
don't know if any of this is necessarily true, but what I will say is it plays a big part into the kind of what had transpired this
Can
past
I be
week
honest with
when
you?
it
Can I
comes
be
to
honest
Aaron
with you?
Rodgers. Yeah,
I think it's true. I mean, let's just look at the facts, man. His quarterback histories has been the same deal. Think about it. Alex Garcia, same type of deal. You want a young quarterback who you think is going to develop over time and then is going to be a star, right?
yeah,
Or you trade for some big star QB, Brett Favre. You bring him in, you expect him to make miracles. He's not going to make miracles. Again, you have Aaron Rodgers, who look, this guy's 40 years old with a bunch of young receivers. He doesn't have the arm he used to have. He needs to have a good offensive line. Throughout his Packers career, one thing people don't mention is he had a great offensive line. David Bakhtiari, as long as he was there, injuries were there, yes, but he was a great tackle. Helped him protect in a lot of situations. That's why Aaron Rodgers can be Aaron Rodgers. Right now, this offensive line is not made to be that, right?
100%.
But see, here's the to me. Okay, I'll mention one more thing in regards to Robert Saleh. Two mistakes that he made in his tenure here. If I'm the owner, I would keep Robert Saleh. If
100%.
I'm the owner, I would keep Robert Saleh. Look, because he's not a great coach. The truth of the fact is, he's not a great coach, but he isn't a horrible coach. He's a pretty good coach, right? So basically, um, yeah, no. See, the underlying thing is this: this team has just been a washed team that doesn't know what to do with themselves. They completely throw away every single opportunity they have. They have a great head coach, throw that away. Have but then somehow they're happy with an offensive coordinator who has Stephen A. Smith's pointed this out. This man has had five offensive coordinator jobs, and one of the jobs that he has, he really didn't do anything. It was Mike LaFleur that just carried the entire thing. Like everybody knows it, right?
100%.
And then all of a sudden, Nathaniel Hackett gets all the credit. He has been a horrible offensive coordinator. The only two mistakes Robert Saleh made in his entire career was making Zach Wilson the starting quarterback for that long, and then number two was hiring Nathaniel Hackett, which is Aaron Rodgers mostly, but it's see the I think the ultimate thing when it comes to Jets is this. You have a horrible owner that doesn't know how to take an appropriate action at the appropriate time, who can somehow always get the best general managers on the planet, but he always just ridicules them and makes them feel wasteful. And then mess up your head coaching line, and as a result, mess up your team. This team is not going to have a winning season, literally.
I'll cap off by saying when it comes to the Jets is that this is a team that coaches go to die. We've seen it with Rex Ryan, Todd Bowles, Robert Saleh. They're not bad coaches. Maybe they could have done things better, but as we've seen, I mean, Robert Saleh had coached a really, really, really good defense. If you were going to fire him, you should have fired him last year. Fire him at this point in time, it just doesn't make sense to me, and it just goes to show you that there was a lot more behind the scenes that we really know when it comes to this Jets team. There's a
Yeah.
big power struggle, as I mentioned, and yeah, you expressed the bunch, but yeah,
Right. So next topic we kind of got to move on to now. Um, First of all, can I ask you this? What time is it there right now?
it is. 11:40.
You guys are crazy. Uh,
At all. What do you mean? We stay up till here till like 2. In my case, 5. But
yeah, you're crazy. Um, all right. So the next thing that we're moving on to, kind of this thing that we kind of stopped last week on, was the quarterback reclamation project almost. Um, I think just to continue off of it, I just have very few points to say in regards to this. I think overall the we're coming to a new age. I mentioned last time we're coming to a new age where these quarterbacks go through struggles initially, but then they learn the game so well from just experience that the next time they go on the field, it might take 5, 6 years, but they just know exactly what to do. And I think that's something that was more in soccer than it is now. Like you're seeing guys like Kevin De Bruyne. Like we talk about him as one of the best midfielders of all time in Premier League history, but when we really think about it, this guy was on Chelsea, got thrown away by Jose Mourinho, had to go to Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga, make his way from up there, come back to the Premier League. Right? He developed because of that experience that he had. Mo Salah, same deal. At Chelsea, he could have been the starter at Chelsea. He got thrown away, went to Roma, went to another Italian club, I think it was Fiorentina, from him there to Roma, built himself up, came back to Liverpool, one of the best wingers of all time. So it's just about that experience gaining project, and I think that helps anybody really. Nick Saban talks about it plenty when it comes to how to develop a college football program that is successful in the long run. And I think that's what, these quarterbacks are benefiting off of. I think when we say Bryce Young, I think he'll be a very good quarterback in 6 years because I think that he's had this experience. He's gonna see who's in front of him now, and he's just gonna be that guy in the background for now. But when he gets his chance, I think he's gonna make the most of it.
I have a little bit more to say about this because this is kind of, for me, this is more my field, quote unquote, field of expertise when it comes to quarterbacks as such, kind of talking and um, kind of discussing this. Um, when it comes to quarterbacks, let's start off with two specific quarterbacks that fall under this category: Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, because um, these are probably the most famous instances of quarterbacks basically improving in a new situation. In the case of Baker Mayfield, I was more optimistic on Baker Mayfield when he came out of the draft than Sam Darnold. For those of you who don't know, my quarterback ranking in 2018 was Lamar, Josh Allen. They were kind of 1A and 1B for me. Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and Mason Rudolph, and then Josh Rosen. I was not a fan of Josh Rosen whatsoever. But um, when it came to Baker Mayfield, I saw a lot of qualities in him that made me feel like he was maybe not going to be, definitely not Drew Brees as such, because Drew Brees is one of a kind. But there were a lot of qualities that at least said, okay, he's going to be a successful starter in the same way that Brees was with, the Chargers, for instance. And he had actually a very similar trajectory to Drew Brees in his first 5 seasons. Started off playing as a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, then got a season ending injury and really got screwed over by the franchise. He went to the Panthers, however, unlike Drew Brees did with New Orleans, and Carolina could have been was the worst situation for him. As we've seen, Carolina really has been a place where quarterbacks go to die. He ends up getting a chance with the Rams, a system that kind of fits him better. And he goes to the Buccaneers. Dave Canales helps him overcome his issues in the past, and he's turned out to be a quality quarterback. When it comes to Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell is a quarterback, has shown to be a quarterback genius. He took Kirk Cousins, who was whether you think he was, closer to above average or closer to a below average quarterback, chances are no one really thought of him to be one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league. Kevin O'Connell had him playing like an MVP candidate the first 5, 6 weeks of 2023. He has not played like that in Atlanta. However, we've seen with Sam Darnold, he has very much played like an MVP candidate this past year, being top numbers in pretty much any stat that you want to put out there. And the same thing can be really said with a lot of these other quarterbacks. I think a lot of them have found situations and systems that really fit them. There was a conversation last year. I remember Brady brought up the idea that when it comes to quarterbacks, there was a lot of lack of detail, lackadaisical, very what's it called? Very poor quality coaching. And So yeah, and then when you come to other quarterbacks, they found their system. We talk about quarterbacks who found you know, kind of the perfect fit for them. And Justin Fields, a guy who the big skill set he has is when it comes to his ability to be a dual threat quarterback, run. At times, his biggest problem is that he gets stuck on one read or tries too hard to get it. But that works in a system like Arthur Smith, where what he did best with a guy like Ryan Tannehill was basically utilize his legs in the same way that he would be able to basically just run the football and then set up easy, simple kind of in the middle crossing route or on the outside type throws, which is basically what Justin Fields has been doing. You see a guy like Geno Smith. The best thing about him has always been his deep ball. You give him a guy like Ryan Grubbs, the Washington offensive coordinator from 2023 with Michael Penix. By the way, if you guys haven't seen Washington football clips from 2023, please go watch it. It's some of the best offensive football you'll ever see as far as just fun, how fun it is to watch. Geno Smith fits that though. You got several other quarterbacks down the
Yeah.
line that have found a guy who fits their respective skill set. Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, and we've seen a lot of quarterbacks that just have had kind of a renaissance this year, and honestly, it's shown to be really exciting. And I think this in some way kind of speaks on how good and how much the NFL is focused on being able to find quarterbacks, given that a franchise quarterback to the level of a Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen is very rare. So a lot of teams are going to have to find a quarterback that they can really develop into an MVP caliber quarterback,
Yeah.
even if he's not of that same skill set, like the Vikings have done with Sam Darnold. And I think for a lot of that, it has helped a lot of teams, be able to um, revive a lot of the careers of quarterbacks who a lot of people, look what's it called, um, wrote off in the past.
Yeah, for sure. I think that you make great points in regards to especially Justin Fields. I think both of us were very high on him. Like we understood that when Chicago was making this move, it was the right move, but it wasn't a situation where like they did it because he was horrible. They did it because they saw that they could do more with Caleb than they could do with Justin in that point of time.
Right.
But we also saw that from I think the Steelers' point of view, Omar Khan made the best decision so far in his career, which is astounding because he's had consecutive top
First
three
draft.
drafts, which he has an incredible staff put together. That is continuing that Steelers reign of just being a top-notch organization all around. So I think that from that standpoint, I think quarterback play is getting better, right? But again, I think we're going to kind of go to the stage where we're not going to see 400 yards a game passing. We're not going to see that 5,000 yards, of pass or offense from one guy. We may not see it for the next 5 seasons, because what I'm trying to say is it's a new age of offense where you have to understand we've finally come to this age of balance. We've gone fully to the run game, fully to the pass game. Now we're going to come to an age where it's unpredictable. And I think that's when the offense is at its best because sometimes we may rush for 400 yards or we may rush for 40, right? But we may pass for 300 yards that game. We may pass for 150. It's just that balance, that uniqueness of not knowing what's coming up next. That's raising the defense. It's just the way the NFL is shaping is just making itself better. That's the beauty of this game. And I think with that, we kind of end ourselves on this episode. We will get obviously more episodes as it comes along. We will try getting it regular, as obviously college life can be hectic, can be crazy,
Yeah, for sure.
but balancing it is what's key, and we're trying to do that as best as we can. Hopefully, we can do it in the future. So
Definitely.
we'll see you soon. Hope you guys are having fun as we are, and yeah, see you guys soon. Peace.
Just make sure to like and subscribe. And as far as, yeah, like Akilesh said, we will put out more content in the future. We got a lot of fun episodes for you, and we're excited for as the NFL trade deadline comes up and as the
Yeah,
second half of the NFL season starts. We're in for a pretty exciting future for the NFL and the 2024 season. So, with that, we'll end off this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.